the day Marcus Alderton decided to wear his dead father's old work jacket into his own hotel. He told himself it was just a management exercise. That was the lie he needed to believe. The jacket smelled faintly of motor oil and something else. Sawdust, maybe, or just the particular scent of a man who had spent 40 years working with his hands. His father, Harold Alderton, had been a maintenance supervisor at a paper mill in Sault Ste. Marie. He had never owned a suit. He had never eaten at a restaurant that required reservations. He had died of a heart attack at 62, still owing $9,000 on a truck that Marcus had quietly paid off 2 weeks after the funeral, without telling anyone. Marcus was 41 now. He owned the Ash Grove Grand, a boutique luxury hotel in the Distillery District of Toronto that had been named Canada's top independent property 3 years running. He had a penthouse on King Street West, a ski chalet outside Whistler he visited twice a year, and a reputation in the industry for being quietly brutal about standards. He had also, in the last 6 months, begun to suspect that something was rotting in the service culture of his own property, and that no one was going to tell him the truth about it. The complaints had started small. A note from a long-term guest about feeling rushed. An anonymous review on a travel site that described the lobby staff as attentive only to the obviously well-dressed. A comment card from a woman named Mrs. Fournier from Sudbury who had written, in careful cursive, "I did not feel welcome here, though I could not say exactly why." That last one had stayed with him. So Marcus had taken the jacket from the storage box in his office closet, pulled on a pair of scuffed work boots that had belonged to his father as well, worn a plain gray undershirt, and driven himself to the Ash Grove Grand on a Thursday morning in November, parking 2 blocks away. He had not shaved in 3 days. He walked in through the front entrance at 11:15, when the lobby would be its most active, checkout rush tapering off, the lunch crowd not yet arrived. He carried nothing except a worn canvas tote bag he had bought at a gas station on the drive over. He had left his phone, his watch, and his wallet containing his black card in the glove compartment. He had $43 in cash in his jacket pocket, and a wedding ring he never wore anymore on his left hand, for no particular reason except that it felt right to put it on that morning. The Ash Grove Grand lobby was, objectively, beautiful. He knew this the way you eventually stop knowing things you look at every day, abstractly, distantly. But walking in from the cold with his father's jacket on, he felt it differently. The ceilings were high and warm lit. There were fresh flowers on the central table, white peonies and eucalyptus, which he knew cost $420 per arrangement and were replaced every 2 days. The floors were Italian marble. A string quartet was playing something soft near the fireplace. It was the kind of place that was designed to make certain people feel small. He understood that now, standing just inside the entrance with November still on his skin. The concierge desk was staffed by 2 people. On the left was a young man Marcus recognized as one of his better hires, a university student named, he believed, something beginning with T. On the right was a woman Marcus had seen around but whose name he couldn't immediately place. Late 20s blonde, extremely polished. She was the one who looked up first. Her name tag said Brianna. She looked at him the way people look at something they are deciding whether to touch. It was a very quick assessment, practiced down to the reflex. Jacket, boots, bag, posture. And then her gaze moved on, past him to the couple coming through the door behind him, who were pulling roller luggage and wearing the particular confident unhurriedness of people who have stayed in fine hotels their entire lives. Marcus stepped to the side. He watched Brianna's expression change completely. Her smile arrived like a light switching on. She stepped forward, greeted the couple by name. They were apparently returning guests, and began ushering them toward the desk with the focused warmth of a person who understood exactly which guests mattered. The young man at the other end of the desk glanced at Marcus. Something passed across his face, a moment of hesitation, then a decision, and he finished the note he was making on his screen, picked up a small binder he'd been reviewing, and turned to a back cabinet. Marcus walked to the desk and stood at the open space. He waited. Brianna was talking with the couple. That was fine. She was busy, and they were guests. But after she had checked them in, handed them their key cards, pointed them toward the elevator, a process that took perhaps 4 minutes. She turned back toward her screen, glanced at Marcus without speaking, and began typing something. "Excuse me," Marcus said. "1 moment," she said, without looking at him. He waited another minute and a half. He counted it. "I was hoping someone could help me," he said. "I have a question about the restaurant. whether they take walk-ins for lunch. Brianna turned and looked at him fully for the first time. The assessment happened again, slower this time. She was deciding how to calibrate her response. "Our dining room is fully reserved for the foreseeable future," she said. "Through today? Through the month generally." This was not true. Marcus knew the reservation book intimately. The lunch service on Thursday was typically half full until the last week of December. There was a standing instruction for the desk staff to always offer the dining room to hotel guests first, but to welcome walk-in inquiries graciously. "I see," Marcus said. "Is there anywhere nearby you'd recommend then? I'm not from the city." She gave him a name, a diner on King Street, without any particular tone, neither warm nor hostile, the way you give someone directions to a place you would never go yourself. "Thank you," Marcus said. She had already looked away. He drifted toward the sitting area near the fireplace, a cluster of leather armchairs and low tables arranged around the hearth, which was open to any visitor, hotel guest or otherwise, by the Ashgrove Grand's own written policy. He sat down. His boots felt very loud on the marble on the way there, even though they weren't. He sat for a while and watched the room. At 12:10, a woman came through the front entrance. She was moving quickly, slightly breathless, unwinding a scarf. She was perhaps 35, dark-haired, with a canvas bag over one shoulder and what appeared to be a portfolio case in her arms. She was dressed professionally but not expensively, the kind of clothes that said, "I am here to work." She scanned the lobby, looking for something. Marcus saw her come to the desk. He saw Brianna give her the same brief, efficient assessment. He saw Brianna point toward the back of the lobby, which led to the meeting rooms, and the woman nodded and started in that direction. She stopped about 10 feet from Marcus's chair because the portfolio case slipped. The latch wasn't fully closed. He could see that from where he sat, and several large sheets of paper and what looked like architectural drawings slid out across the marble floor. Brianna saw this. She was not busy. She watched it happen. She did not move. Marcus was already standing. He crossed to where the woman was crouching, gathering the papers with the harried efficiency of someone who has already been running behind and cannot afford to fall further behind. And he knelt and helped her collect the drawings, holding them flat against the floor so they wouldn't bend in the draft from the door. "Thank you," the woman said. She looked up. "Oh, thank you, you didn't have to." "The latch," Marcus said, nodding at the portfolio case. She looked. "God, I didn't check it this morning. I was rushing." She pushed the latch down until it clicked, then accepted the drawings he'd gathered and slid them in carefully. "Thank you so much. I'm already late. Good luck," Marcus said. She smiled at him, not the hotel-trained smile, not the calibrated warmth of someone performing a role, but the genuine smile of a person who is actually grateful and slightly frazzled and human, and then she continued toward the meeting rooms. Marcus stood and turned back toward the sitting area. The young man at the desk, the one who'd been busy with the binder, was standing at the edge of the desk, watching. He hadn't helped either, but he was looking at Marcus with an expression Marcus couldn't quite read. Marcus sat back down. At 12:45, he got up and walked toward the restaurant entrance. Not to eat, just to see what happened. The host at the restaurant entrance was a tall young man with carefully arranged hair who projected the serene confidence of someone who has been told he is exactly right for this job. He looked at Marcus. His expression was, again, that practiced almost nothing, polite enough to avoid confrontation, uninviting enough to discourage persistence. "I know I don't have a reservation," Marcus said. "I was just hoping. I'm in town on my own, no particular plans. Any chance of a table? Even a small one, by the window maybe, if that's—" "I'm sorry, we're fully committed for lunch service today." Marcus looked past the host. He could see 4 empty tables. "I see," he said. "Thank you." He went back to the lobby. He sat down again. He was not angry exactly. He was something quieter and more durable than angry. He was constructing something in his mind, brick by brick, and he needed to be sure he was building it accurately. That was when the young man from the concierge desk appeared beside him. He was off the desk now, on break apparently, because he'd removed his name tag and was carrying a small paper cup of coffee from the staff area. He stopped near Marcus's chair. "Sorry to bother you," he said. His name tag was gone, but Marcus now recalled his name from a staff list he'd reviewed recently. Theodore Kwan, 23, studying hospitality management at Ryerson. Hired 8 months ago. He'd been on Marcus's shortlist for a commendation, though Marcus hadn't acted on it yet. "You're fine," Marcus said. "I noticed you were asking about lunch." Theodore sat in the adjacent chair. not as a service gesture, but as an ordinary human gesture. If you're not in a rush, the restaurant does a bar seating that isn't in the reservation system. It's at the chef's counter. They usually have a couple of spots. Marcus looked at him. Is that something you'd normally share with a walk-in? Theodore shrugged slightly. It's not really advertised. But it's a better meal than the diner on King, honestly. And they pour the wine more generously at the counter. He smiled. It was an easy, unpracticed smile. I heard Brianna mention the diner, it's fine. But you'd be back in 20 minutes and still hungry. You heard that. The desk is close. Theodore paused. She's efficient. She has a system for categorizing people. Most of the staff do. It's not official policy or anything. It's just what happens when no one's really paying attention to it. Marcus said nothing. Theodore seemed to realize he had said something that crossed some line of professional prudence, because his expression shifted slightly, not into retreat, but into something more careful. That was probably more than I should have. No, Marcus said. I appreciate it, the honesty. Theodore nodded. He finished his coffee. He stood up, preparing to return to the desk. The bar seating, you'd just tell the host you're interested in the counter. It's a different ask. He'll find you a spot. I will, Marcus said. Theodore stopped, turned. His expression was very still. I should introduce myself properly, Marcus said. He did not stand up. He simply said quietly, Marcus Alderton. The name took about 2 seconds to land. Marcus watched it happen, the slight intake of breath, the rapid recalibration, the beginning of something that wanted to be alarm and was managing itself into careful composure. Sir, Theodore said. Sit down for a second, Marcus said. Theodore sat. I'm not here to evaluate you personally, Marcus said. You did well today. Better than well. I'm going to want to talk with you properly. Not now, not like this, but soon. What you said about the categorizing, the staff system that nobody's officially tracking, I want to understand that better. From someone who's seeing it from the inside. Theodore was quiet for a moment. How long have you been sitting here? Since 11:15. Did you eat? Marcus almost laughed. It surprised him, the almost law. No, the kitchen closes at 2, Theodore said. You've got about 10 minutes, Marcus stood. He was still wearing his father's jacket. He smoothed the front of it, an old reflex from childhood. Harold Alderton had always straightened his jacket before entering a room, regardless of what the room was. 10 minutes is enough, he said. He went to the restaurant entrance. He said to the host with the carefully arranged hair that he was interested in the counter seating. Something shifted in the hostess' expression. He checked. There was one spot at the chef's counter. At the end, Marcus ate lunch alone, in his father's jacket, at the counter of his own restaurant. The food was very good. He tipped 40% in cash. That evening, in his actual office, not the lobby chair, not the jacket, Marcus sat with his director of operations, a woman named Renata Blythe, who had been with the property since before Marcus had acquired it. She was 54 and had the quality of someone who had been unpressed by most things for a long time, which Marcus had always appreciated. He told her what he'd observed. Not all of it, and not as an indictment. He told it the way he told her most things. Plainly, in sequence without dramatizing. When he finished, Renata was quiet for a moment. Brianna Holst, she said. She's been mentioned in 2 commendation forms this quarter, both from guests with suites, I know, and she's almost certainly not the worst case of it. She's just the one you saw. I know that too. Renata folded her hands on the table. What do you want to do? This was the question Marcus had been sitting with since he'd driven home. The obvious answer, discipline Brianna, refresh the service standards training, issue a memo, was the answer that would change nothing. It would be a performance of accountability. Staff would straighten up for 6 weeks and then return, incrementally, to whatever they had been. I want to change what they're paying attention to, Marcus said. Not their behavior when they think they might be evaluated. What they actually value, what they're trained to see. That's a culture problem, yes. Culture problems take 2 years to move, I know, and you'll have turnover. Some people won't be able to make the shift. Brianna Holst, Marcus said, is going on a performance improvement plan starting Monday. I'll handle that conversation personally. It won't be punitive. I want her to understand what actually happened today, and I want her to have the choice to change it. Renata looked at him. And if she doesn't? Then she doesn't, Marcus said. We'll part professionally and she'll find a property that's a better fit for what she wants to do. It was not a dramatic conversation. It was just a conversation between 2 people who understood the same things about what a place like this was supposed to be. Renata left around 9. Marcus stayed in the office for another hour making notes. Not the operational kind, but the other kind, the kind he rarely made and rarely showed anyone. He wrote about his father, about the paper mill, about what it had felt like to walk through his own lobby and be looked through, and how that feeling had been familiar in a way he hadn't expected, because it was the feeling of being his father's son in rooms that hadn't been built for people like his father. He had worked most of his adult life to build rooms that were different. He hadn't checked whether he'd succeeded. He put the jacket back in the box in the closet. He kept the notes. 3 weeks later, Brianna Holst came to his office. Not because she had been summoned. The performance improvement conversation had already happened, with Renata present. And it had gone the way those conversations go when someone is fundamentally unready to hear them. With careful neutrality that read underneath as resistance. She came because she had requested the meeting herself. Marcus had not expected this. She sat across from his desk with the posture of someone who had rehearsed something and was now less certain they wanted to deliver it. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began, "or what was said in the meeting. I know you were the one in the lobby. I figured it out later. The work jacket." A pause. "Your photo's on the website." "It is," Marcus agreed. "I've been in hospitality for 6 years," she said. "I've worked at 3 properties before this one. And at all of them the informal training, the things they don't put in a manual, was the same. You learn which guests to prioritize. You learn the signals. Luggage brand, watch, shoes, how they carry themselves." She stopped. "I was good at it. I was promoted because I was good at it." "I understand that," Marcus said. "I wasn't being cruel to that man," she said, "to you. I didn't think of it as cruelty. I thought of it as efficiency." "I know," Marcus said. "That's the part that concerned me most." She was quiet. Outside, a streetcar went by on King Street. The windows of Marcus's office were slightly cold to the touch in November. "I don't know if I can unlearn 6 years of that in a performance improvement plan," she said. It was a genuinely honest thing to say, and Marcus recognized it as such. "You might not be able to," he said. "I'm not going to pretend otherwise. What I can tell you is that this property is going to change what it measures and what it rewards. The question is whether what you're good at, and you are good at your job, Brianna, in a lot of respects, can be redirected or whether it's too tied to a particular framework." She looked at him steadily. "You're not firing me." "Not today," he said. "You came here, you said honest things. That matters." She left without resolution, not repaired, not dismissed, just in the uncomfortable middle territory of a person who has been asked to see themselves differently and doesn't yet know what they'll do with it. Marcus thought about that for a long time afterward. He didn't have a tidy feeling about it. It was Theodore he thought about differently. Not romantically, nothing like that. But the young man had done something Marcus had rarely seen in 20 years of running hospitality properties. He had noticed someone being overlooked. He had not rerouted the problem to a superior or a policy, and he had simply helped. Not as a formal service gesture. He'd been off the desk, on break, divested of his name tag, but as one person extending a small, practical kindness to another. This was the thing Marcus had been trying for years to institutionalize, and it turned out it was either in someone or it wasn't. He met with Theodore formally in the second week of December. Not in the office, at a table in the restaurant, which he thought was more honest. He told Theodore what he'd been observing and thinking about, and that he was in the early stages of building a mentorship track for staff who showed particular aptitude for the kind of culture he was trying to develop. Theodore listened carefully. He asked 2 or 3 questions, which were better questions than Marcus usually received from people 3 times his age. One of them was, what happens to the staff who are good at the current system and genuinely can't adapt? Are we being honest with them about that? That's exactly the right question, Marcus said. I'm not asking to be difficult. I just think. Theodore paused. If people don't know the culture is actually changing, they'll keep calibrating to whatever the old signals were. You'd have to be very clear about what's actually being measured now. Not in a memo, in real interactions. Repeatedly. Over a long time. I know, Marcus said. Is that what you're planning? Yes. Good, Theodore said. He looked down at his menu, then back up. Can I ask one more thing? Go ahead. Why the jacket, the specific jacket? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Outside the window of the restaurant, the distillery district was doing what it did in December. Strung lights, brick, the smell of Christmas markets drifting in. He had loved this neighborhood before he'd owned anything in it. It belonged to my father, he he said. He was a maintenance supervisor in a paper mill. He never would have been comfortable in a place like this. I wanted to know whether I'd built somewhere that would have made him feel that way, or somewhere different. And the answer, Marcus said, was complicated. Theodore nodded. He didn't press it. The food arrived. They talked about other things. The mentorship program, the specific metrics Marcus was considering, the idea of building a feedback system that captured guest experience data without reducing it to star ratings. It was a good conversation. Marcus found himself less careful in it than he usually was. Near the end of the meal, Theodore said, almost as an aside, "Your father, would he have liked this place, if it had been the way you want it to be?" Marcus picked up his coffee. He thought about Harold Alderton, who had been a man of modest words and very specific loyalties, who had been suspicious of expense without purpose, who had said, more than once, that the measure of a place was how it treated people who had nothing to gain from being treated well. "Yeah," Marcus said. "I think he would have liked it if we get it right." He meant the hotel. He also meant other things. He wasn't sure, in that moment, how to separate them. In the new year, Brianna Holst transferred to another property. A larger corporate hotel downtown that was, Marcus thought, genuinely a better fit for her skills and her framework. The transfer was clean and professional, and Marcus wrote her a reference that was honest about what she was good at. She had come back to the office one more time before leaving, and she had said, without quite looking at him, that she understood what he'd been trying to do in the lobby that November morning, even if she hadn't fully understood why she'd behaved the way she had. "I think I'm better with certainty," she said. "Clear rules, explicit expectation, that's a skill," Marcus said. "It's just a different properties skill." She nodded. She left. He did not hear from her again, but he hoped she was fine. Theodore Kwan was promoted in February, not to a management role, because he wasn't ready for that yet and they both knew it, but to a lead position within the guest experience team, with a specific mandate around service culture and informal mentorship of newer staff. His pay increased, his responsibilities increased. He handled both with the same quiet steadiness Marcus had first noticed in November. They had lunch periodically, not as a formal check-in, just lunch. Marcus found it useful to talk with someone who saw the property from the inside, at floor level, without the distortions that came with authority. Theodore was unfailingly honest. It was occasionally uncomfortable. Marcus thought it was probably the most valuable standing meeting on his calendar. At one of these lunches, in late February, snow still on the ground outside, the distillery district quiet and gray in a way Marcus had always found unexpectedly beautiful, Theodore said something that Marcus wrote down later after he'd gone back to his office. "I think the thing about your father's jacket," Theodore said, "is that it wasn't really a test of the staff. It was a test of you, whether you were willing to see what was actually there." Marcus looked at him. "A lot of people would have just commissioned a third-party audit." Theodore continued. "Read the report, sent the memo. You put on an old jacket and sat in the lobby for 2 hours and ate alone at the counter. That's a different thing." Marcus thought about the $43 in his pocket, the weight of the canvas tote bag, the string quartet playing something soft by the fireplace, and the way the marble floor had felt under his father's boots. "I needed to know," Marcus said, "not from a report, actually know." "Why?" Theodore asked. Not challenging, genuinely asking. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Through the restaurant window, a family was walking by in the snow. 2 adults and a child, the child about 4, bundled to near spherical, stumping along between the adults with the purposeful toddle of someone who has not yet learned that walking is unremarkable. "My father worked in places his whole life where nobody asked him what he thought," Marcus said. "Where he was there to perform a function. As long as he performed it, no one needed to know anything else about him. I built this place to be different from that. I needed to find out if I'd actually done it, or just built a new version of the same thing with better marble." Theodore was quiet. "The answer is still complicated," Marcus said, "but it's less complicated than it was." Theodore picked up his coffee. "That's probably the best anyone can do." "Probably," Marcus agreed. Outside, the child in the snow had found a patch of ice and was testing it carefully with one boot, then the other, deciding how much weight it would hold. The adults waited. They didn't rush. Marcus watched them until they moved on, and then he turned back to the table, and he and Theodore finished their lunch, and the afternoon went on the way afternoons do, full of small, ordinary things that mattered in ways you might not always notice, but that accumulated. Over time, into something you could put your weight on.